Game Freak is most famously known as the company who makes the Pokemon games, as they are owners of the Pokemon Company and have been developing the series since 1996. With Game Freak, however, they've made games before Pokemon and after Pokemon that most people don't talk about. And today I want to just talk about a few that really remind me that Game Freak is more than just the Pokemon Company. And I wanted to start off with their first game, which was Mendel's Palace on the NES. And this is an action puzzle game published by Namco, where you push up tiles and flip them to push enemies into the wall. It's very similar to kind of NES style arcade games you'd see around the time from the Black Box series and more. And overall, I do think it is one of my favorite NES games. And it also has a lot of the Game Freak staff who would later work on the Pokemon games for the soundtrack, the art team, and much more. So definitely check that one out. And it even has 2-player co-op, so you can do multiplayer with that, which is a lot of fun. And then we have Magical Tarutakun, which was for Sega Genesis on Mega Drive in 1993. This is based off an anime and manga license game from Shonen Jump, commissioned by Sega. And it's an action platformer aimed towards a younger audience, specifically kids, where you play as Magical Tarutakun and use your little magic powers to go through some different stages. This was the first game that's Game Freak made on the Sega Genesis, and it has a fantastic soundtrack, very pretty graphics, and it's very short. You can finish it in an hour, and it shows that a lot of roots for Game Freak started with that game along with Mendel Palace. And there is a simple action platformer on a console known for hardcore action platformers such as the Sonic the Hedgehog series, Alien Soldier, Gunstar Heroes, and more. And then we have Pulseman, which is the other Game Freak game that was available on the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive in Japan in 1994. This is an action platformer in line with like a Sonic or Mega Man game where you play as Pulseman, and you use the Volt Techer to do electric damage and attacks around the stages, and it has a very techno style to it, very snazzy and aesthetically pleasing. And that was the last game that Game Freak made for Sega on the Genesis, and it's pretty fun. It is one of my favorite games of all time. It's pretty tough, so you may want to stack up on lives and learn how to use the Volt Techer. And overall, I do really enjoy Pulseman, and always am happy to listen to the soundtrack, especially for Neo Tokyo, which they reference in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl for Barry's theme. And they also have the Super Target theme, which is used for the credits as well. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about Drill Dozer, which is Game Freak's final game for Game Boy Advance after Pokemon Emerald, released in 2005 in Japan and 2006 for America. This is also an action platformer where you use the little drill with Jill, and you go through different stages as you drill down and use her attacks, as the game uses a Rumble cartridge included on the top, and the console shakes with you as you do different drill attacks. And it sort of has like a little bit of like a Metroidvania style level design with each stage as you go around and see the gimmicks they use with the Drill Dozer. And it's a lot of fun and very underrated, as most people, when they think of Game Freak, they think of the Pokemon Game Boy Advance games, especially Pokemon Emerald, as it's seen as one of the most popular and beloved games in the series. So by the time Drill Dozer came out in 2006 in America and didn't release in Europe, most people were already done with the Game Boy Advance and weren't able to give it a chance. And there's a lot more from Game Freak out there, such as Little Town Hero, Pocket Card Jockey, and so on. But I think what I think about Game Freak more than anything is that this company really is more than the Pokemon company to me. There's been a lot of drama Game Freak over the years in regards to the transition to 3D of Pokemon since Pokemon X and Y, and more recently with how Pokemon Legends ZA on the Nintendo Switch and Switch 2 have a very mixed reception compared to what Legends Arceus did, as this is a fully real-time action-based Pokemon game that takes place in the luminous city of the Kalos region for Pokemon X and Y. So I think with what's been going on with Game Freak, along with the leak that happened years ago, and even recently they had a leak about Game Freak's plans for the next coming years, that maybe people should consider checking out Game Freak's other games, because a lot of people tend to be very heated about Pokemon, where it's a popular series, but it's very polarizing to it. You can't even talk about Pokemon online without someone getting mad at you or someone bringing up the Pokemon company, or someone bringing up Nintendo. And it makes it very hard to talk about not only Pokemon, but Game Freak as a developer. And also, just because they're one of the most popular companies in terms of like being a world leader and what Pokemon does as a series, but they don't really have much left there when people want to check their other works. They kind of fail at making games that kind of stick after Pokemon, which if we take, for example, a company like From Software, who has their Dark Souls games, Elden Ring, Sekiro, and their Armored Core games, but they had a bunch of other stuff in the past, and people out there, especially people who are video game enthusiasts, are willing to check out From Software, give their games a shot. But it seems that Game Freak, unfortunately, like Sonic Team, doesn't have that many people that are willing to see what goes beyond the mascot brand recognition IP that is Pokemon and Sonic the Hedgehog. So I hope that with this video that more people are able to give some of Game Freak's games a shot. They tend to be very expensive on the aftermarket, so maybe consider finding another way to experience Game Freak's games. And hopefully with this, you can see why Game Freak means more to me than just the Pokemon company and why they are one of my favorite game developers of all time. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.